unlike Sean, I was seeing things that were not there. I wasn't seeing a exaggerated illusion, and that's what everything was. It was like a mosaic of these traffic reflectors.
There were things in the room that could have triggered your response. So again, to me, in the strict sense, a hallucination is seeing something that is not there. All you did was possibly, I don't know because I didn't see it, but possibly it could be explained in you just misinterpreted what was there.
Tim had an alternative account which challenged the idea that we normally see the world as it is, and instead suggested that through perception we construct reality.
You take in what information is available and you fill it into holes so that you don't see just a set of lines, you see a television. And on the television you don't just see another set of colours and lines, you see a face, and we know that this face is Sean. You're doing that all the time, routinely. Now, that means that you're making this world as much as this world is coming into you. It's not, perceiving is not a passive experience. Now, what I think is apparent from the discussion so far and what they've described is that they saw things differently. Now, whether or not we call one an illusion, which is meant to be a misinterpretation, or an hallucination, where you have a perception in the absence of an object out there, might not be quite the point. It may not be the point.
No, I think
actually Daniel did describe hallucinations in terms of what the lines on mine. The fact that you've seen reflectors, there is no reflector whatsoever on my trousers. That is a proper hallucination. Yeah? That is a proper hallucination. Their laughter, I think, is accurately portraying a different perception of what's going on that the rest of us weren't seeing.
I don't disagree with you in one sense. I disagree with the tone that it's coming over in, which is this is a sort of... We're all, if you're normal and not taking the drug, you're missing something. There's something more out there. No, there isn't. All you're seeing is a slightly distorted view of what is there.
Excuse me, people, I'd like to point out that one reason I think these plants are very useful, particularly something like Salvia Divinorum, is that we develop a worldview and a way to consensually agree on what the world is. And we get so wrapped up in that perception, that cultural point of view, or human point of view, that most of us assume that's all it is, and we believe it so much that we don't like having that shaken up. It's threatening. And something like this says, look, remember, there's something else out there. There's more to it than just the way you've been looking at it.
Is there something mythical, magical, outside of the human experience that's coming in? Or is it just that there's you've got the same world that I'm talking about, but you're just looking at it at a slightly different angle?
In lots of ways, what I'd want to argue with you about is that there are many different ways of seeing things, many different aspects, many different ways of perceiving similar sorts of things. Now, we cannot grasp those things in themselves. We can't say, look, this is the reality of things. What we can do is we can come to some sort of judgment, some sort of evaluation about whether or not this particular way of seeing things works, whether or not it's pleasurable, whether or not we can see other ways or whatever.
We do that when we grow up as children.
But what you seem to be saying is there is one right way of seeing it. I don't know how we can know that.
Sean and Daniel later returned to the forest where they had taken the salvia the previous night.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. No, part of the nation.
Yeah, so here's where we have the blanket.
Oh, no.
I remember all the flares out there.
Everything looks so bland now, doesn't it? It's like...
It does.
I'm missing the two-tone effect of all the, the light on one half of the tree and the just complete blackness on the other, yeah.
Yeah.
I preferred it last night.
Yeah. Last night it didn't seem like there was any sky, well, because there was black behind, but it seemed like the leaves just made a continuous fabric of almost like being in a tent.
And we want now to get back to the question we began with about why this plant is so special in Mazatec society and what properties it has and what causes them. Françoise.
Well, I have found the last 2 days sessions most illuminating in this very perspective. We have seen that taken in an experimental setting, in a controlled setting, Salvia produces the same effects which are described in the chants of the Master text. Here we have two subjects who are not aware of this context and yet come up with the same perceptions of total fun, hilarious sense of perspective, and a euphoric, peace-inducing state of mind.
Mm-hmm. Tim, what do you think we've learned?
I suppose as a starting off point, I'd say I think we have learnt something about Salvia. It does appear to have quite a significant impact upon the people concerned. Now, when it comes to one of the questions that we raised, which was that does Salvia aid, in a sense, the recall of memories or hidden, forgotten memories, I suspect it probably does. I mean, certainly with Daniel, what we did see was that Daniel began to, I think, get into a state where these things would have been much more accessible to him.
John, do you agree with that description of what was actually happening?
I suppose not. It happens to have a psychotropic or psychomimetic compound in it, or compounds in it, that interfere with normal brain chemistry or brain activity, and that alters the perception of the world, and you could find other substances that can do that as well.
While John thought Salvia was an interference, a negative threat to normal brain activity, Tim was more inclined to see it positively, as enhancing memory.
Daniel used the drug in a semi-self-conscious way to explore inner space, and that's almost what he did in front of us in the apparently experimental situation. He began to say, well, you know, look, this space here is beginning to represent his own existence temporally, and as the further you went away from where he was, the further backwards in time it went. And he even began to see a boy he hadn't seen for years and years and years. Named him David. Now, I mean, I couldn't tell you where that would end. But it's persuasive enough for me to think that what these drugs might well be doing is making available to people competing interpretations of what's going on, internally and externally.
Both these effects.
The underlying difference in approach soon led to an argument about the potential uses of Salvia.
I would have thought that as a candidate for a more socially developed way of gaining different conceptions, different alternative competing ways of understanding the world we live in, our relationships, etc., I would have thought that this might be an exceptionally worthwhile drug if it was in the right, well-supported social context.
I think the bottom line still is, this is a toxin. The plant made it as a toxin. This is a poison in reality. We don't know how it works. We don't know what really it does. You've got to do a risk-benefit thing on it. You know, what are the risks to taking this substance? What are the benefits? And at the moment, I can't really see any benefits, apart from a mild, semi-delusional state that's quite enjoyable. So I wouldn't at all sanction taking this compound, and I certainly wouldn't take it myself.